You are looking as svelte as ever. I just heard something that you said recently that blew me away, which I want to dive into right away because I've made a huge deal about the importance of adding muscle mass. And last year for me, adding 10 pounds of muscle was like a number one objective. And I hit it, but it was a lot of hard work. You've just written this book, Harder Not Smarter, or Smarter Not Harder. And
Either way.
I heard you're doing how much weight a week? How much weight workout?
I'm doing 20 minutes of total exercise a week, Peter.
Okay. So, and you feel like that is delivering you, it's pretty amazing.
This is my week. That's caffeine tattoo. I feel like it's working. Like,
137 trimethylxanthine. I can read that.
That's exactly what's on the arm. But I feel like a kind of a douchebag flexing as a nerd on Instagram, but I was just in a couple magazines and actually on Nightline with my shirt off. I was a fat computer hacker. I still have stretch marks. Like this is so unlikely.
All right. So listen, I need the secrets right now because I have a lot to do in life, and keeping muscle is a top objective. I do like working out. I like the habits of it, but I don't want to have to. So how do you maintain muscle mass or build muscle mass on 20 minutes a week? I don't get it. That doesn't sound plausible to me.
It's okay. It doesn't sound plausible to a lot of people. In fact, it makes some people mad when I say that. Diary of a CEO
makes me hopeful, buddy. Makes me hopeful.
Good. It makes me hopeful too. Diary of a CEO actually canceled my interview, which is a big podcast, because they thought I was lying. I'm like, do you want to ask my girlfriend or my assistant? How do I prove what I'm not doing? And number one, you have to have working mitochondria for this to work. Right. So mitochondrial function is terribly, terribly important. And thyroid hormone is important. No matter how much you exercise, if your thyroid is off even a little bit, your TSH levels should be at or below 1 for longevity. And there are other measures of thyroid function that matter besides just TSH. That's the easy one. So I've been on thyroid since I was about 26 because I had Hashimoto's, because I had toxic mold. In fact, I had very low thyroid back then. So building muscle requires energy. Having energy requires thyroid. Number two.
How much do you take each day?
I take about 2 grains of Armour thyroid or equivalent, which is appropriate for my body weight and my markers. It's totally different for different people. I do think anyone over age 40 will have early onset mitochondrial dysfunction. We just call it aging, and we call it normal for your age. So the idea that an eighth
first thing in the morning, I have literally an Armour thyroid pill on the
good for you. And in fact, if you want to have less Alzheimer's and less diabetes, taking even a quarter grain, which is a relatively small dose, starting in your 40s or 50s is going to help to stave off cognitive dysfunction, as long as your labs support doing it. Your TSH is probably at 2 or 3, and you want to bring it down to 1 and just keep it there. And that's a part of building muscle. It's also a part of being lean. I'm 6% body fat right now. And this isn't by trying, Peter. I'm never hungry. This is ridiculous. And the second thing is exercise without adequate animal protein doesn't work well. And I say animal protein specifically because I've been a vegan, I've been a raw vegan, and I've experimented with like highly processed plant proteins. The evidence is in that even the very best plant proteins have anti-nutrients, and their amino acid availability is so low, you need probably twice as much. So I do 1 gram of animal protein per pound of body weight. And
so I do the same. I've done that. I've actually started going between animal and plant protein back and forth. I recently had a long conversation with Dan Buettner, who you know.
Yeah, I love Dan.
And Dan's amazing. And what he says is that, if you look at all the Blue Zone diets, it's like a minimal amount of animal protein.
I think it's wishful thinking. You look at Hong Kong, which has the highest intake and has similar Blue Zone numbers. It's just not in the book because it didn't fit the model. And so I think Dan's a beautiful human being and a true believer in longevity. But when I sat down with him on my show, can you tell me why beans work? He goes, look, epidemiology says beans work, therefore they work. But I am not an average of 100,000 Okinawans. I am exactly this human being. And when I eat beans, they wreck my metabolism for very specific reasons. So doing what everyone does would be the lemming approach. I'm all about personalization. Yes, I've tested a vegan diet. I've tested beans. I've tested animal protein and plant protein. And I've also looked at the mechanistic studies. I think you can start with epidemiology to find clues, but you have to look at mechanistics and look at personal outcomes. And I'll say straight up, the Blue Zones diet's a recipe for disaster for most of the people I work with.
So, you are the king biohacker. In fact, in Webster's dictionary, you define biohacking. So you live that life. And the question is, you're not saying these are the right things for everybody. You're saying you need to test and this is what you do and works for you.
Biohacking is kind of the enemy of epidemiology. And it's that
N of one, baby. N of one.
Yeah, it's a commitment to only do what works for you and to measure it. Because I tried being a vegan. I tried being a semi-vegetarian. I was low fat. I went to the gym 6 days a week, 90 minutes a day when I had a 46-inch waist. And I ended 18 months of just struggle with more muscle, but still had a 46-inch waist and still weighed 300 pounds. So I don't care if it's supposed to work. If it doesn't work, then quit doing it and do something better with your life. And I just wish I'd have had the courage to do that earlier, because I
so I want to go back to this 20 minutes on maintaining and building muscle.
Okay.
With 20 minutes. Okay. So protein loading, how often? 150 grams, or is it a gram per pound? Yes.
It's a gram per pound. So for me, it's closer to 200.
Yeah.
And
when do you take it? Through the day?
Throughout the day. But here's what we used to believe, and I've even put this in one of my early books, that 30 to 50 grams of protein is all you can absorb in one sitting. And about 3 years ago, when I started getting leaner and putting on some muscle, I thought to myself, I only eat 2 meals a day. I can't do 200 grams of protein. So I'm just going to do 100 grams per meal, and I'll take digestive enzymes. And if it's not absorbing, it'll make ammonia, and I'll smell it when I fart. So there was no weightlifter farts involved. So I was absorbing the protein. And just about 3-4 months ago, a study came out that completely decimated this idea of 30 to 50 grams. It turns out that's a myth. You can absorb more than 100 grams of protein in a meal as long as you have enzymes present, and it'll absorb throughout the day and affect protein synthesis. So the reason this is working is that when I eat protein, I took 100 grams of animal protein powder this morning, and I'm going to eat a steak tonight with some enzymes, and I'm good to go.
Any particular enzymes you use?
I like broad spectrum enzymes that contain betaine, HCl, and ox bile. And that seems to work better than just taking something like just a protease or a papain or something like that. So you want something that will break down as many different proteins as you can. So they typically have a lot of ingredients.
Creatine?
Yes.
How much?
I am a fan of creatine, but with the amount of animal protein I need, I get about 5 grams a day, but I take an additional probably 3 or 4 grams every day. There's a form called GAA creatine that seems to have better evidence behind it. So that's what I use. But honestly, creatine monohydrate works just fine. The hack for creatine, if you really want to absorb it, is to don't put it in cold water, put it in warm water so that it actually dissolves. Suspending particles of creatine doesn't work very well. Getting it to dissolve like salt to make salt water, that makes creatine much more bioavailable.
There's a new creatine product called Create, which is a creatine gummy that I just got sent to me by some friends, and tastes yummy and easy. One of the things you have to worry about with your protein loading is making sure your kidney function. So I actually recently backed off on the amount of protein I was taking in because my body was trying to eliminate it, and my kidney functions began decreasing.
It's a conundrum because kidney function is sort of the fifth of the horsemen in my book on longevity. I'm like, okay, diabetes leads to cancer, cardiovascular disease, and Alzheimer's. But right behind that, the high blood pressure that's a part of diabetes leads to kidney dysfunction. So if you can fix kidneys, you've got a blockbuster drug. So I also only have one kidney. I was born that way. I didn't know it until I was 30 because I have a super mega kidney, and it doesn't cause any health problems. But I monitor my function really well, like GFR. It turns out the hack for that is don't eat the plants that contain oxalates, because calcium oxalate radically shreds your kidneys. I'm talking kale, spinach, raspberries, almonds, a lot of the so-called superfoods. These are measurably and very quantifiably high in a compound that is so bad for your kidneys. I also take 2 tablespoons of lemon juice for the citric acid that helps to dissolve extra calcium throughout my tissues. So I have really young tissues when people do work on me. Like, what is going on? You feel like you're 20, not like you're 50. And I think that's really important to just talk about oxalate and kidney function. So nuts, seeds, and some but not all vegetables, 70% of kidney stones are caused by plants, by oxalate, not by phosphate, which is the ones we'd be concerned about. The other one, Peter, is 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda away from a meal every day is going to also change pH in a way that protects your kidneys.
I can imagine that. Going back to 20 minutes of workout, building muscle. I'm trying to learn this and believe this.
Here's the principle, and this is in Smarter, Not Harder. It's that we like to think that if something is good, more is better. It's just a typical cognitive bias that saves electricity in our brains. So if you go to the gym, if you lift twice as much or for twice as long, or you run for more, you'll get more benefits, right? More training is better. It turns out that isn't really how things work. What the body's looking for is the slope of the curve. How quickly did you bring on the stress? And most importantly, how quickly could you return to baseline, which sends a signal of safety. And if you have safety and adequate minerals and adequate protein, the body can put muscle on very effectively. Oh, and adequate testosterone, which we can talk about in a minute. So this is, people say, oh, you mean high intensity interval training? No, it's even less than that for cardio. You get a 12% VO2 max improvement in 15 minutes of exercise without sweating every week. This is part of the Stack It Upgrade Labs. This is a franchise. Now we've got 30 locations across the US that are opening, and probably another dozen or 2 that'll happen after my last conference. So you come in, in the amount of time I brushed my teeth, I did cardio, but I got 6 times better results than I did from going to a spin class 5 days a week. And this is university studies on just that AI tech. And then for muscle, there's about 5 or 6 things that will get a signal into your muscle more quickly. As long as you know how to calm down and you're properly nourished, you'll put muscle on in stupidly small amounts of time. And it turns out picking up rocks, which is what weightlifting is, we just concentrate the rocks into plates, which is our biggest innovation in 5,000 years. I don't pick up rocks. I fight against a computer that doesn't believe in gravity. So the feedback system against my muscles, also part of Upgrade Labs, it's called the AI cheat machine. And what it's doing is it's causing either perturbations or a movement of the weight that confuses my muscles. So my proprioceptors don't try to protect my joints. They don't need to when it's a controlled environment. That means I can load faster. And that means when I'm done, if I had the protein and I had the minerals and I had the testosterone, the body says, oh, that was hard, but I'm safe. Let me put on muscle quickly. So it's about setting up the environment and then getting the right signal in. And man, this works. And it works so effortlessly that you just, I've never looked better in my life. And I've never had an easier time doing it because I'm using precise signaling instead of brute force.
Talk to me about testosterone. What levels do you like maintaining? How much do you supplement? How do you supplement?
Everyone should have the levels of a healthy 25-year-old from 1970. If you really want to change the world.
Before they changed the recommendations?
The recommendation, and before we flooded the world with estrogen, plastics, and all these other chemicals, because kids today have half the levels that they did 30 years ago. And adults do as well. And if you're sitting here going, I can't put on muscle and I'm tired and unmotivated, testosterone drives dopamine in the brain. So if you have enough testosterone, but not too much, suddenly you're excited and motivated to change the world. And if you wake up and you're just like, oh, maybe it's your testosterone affecting your dopamine and it's not the amount of effort you did. And what I found is that when I was overtraining reliably suppresses testosterone. So I have been supplementing testosterone since I was 26 when my anti-aging doctor showed me that my lab results on testosterone were lower than my mother. This actually happened. His name is Dr. Phil Miller, right? And I had some metabolic problems, you could say. So I've kept my levels between 750 and probably they peak around 1100 sometimes, but around 900 is where I want them. Different men with different backgrounds feel best at somewhere between, at the low end, about 750 and around 1100, but you got to find the number for you.